Keith, now that we're streaming, you might be able to get in.
Oh. So what am I supposed to, where am I supposed to see a streaming button?
It'll say live and should happen in just about 1 second.
Okay. Oh, it says live now. Okay. Okay. I'm going to call the March 2020 meeting of the Niskayuna Zoning Board of Appeals to order. If we could please call the roll.
Mr. Frary,
Yes.
Mr. Lateif,
Yes.
Ms. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Bay. I thought I saw him. Mr.
Did you
Bay,
say Mr. Big? Yeah, present.
Mr. Green,
Here.
Present.
Chairman Goodman.
Present. The first order of business would be the approval of the minutes from the February meeting. Is there a motion that anyone wishes to make?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion.
A motion has been made to approve the minutes. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Who was
Mo-
that?
Maureen.
There's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I think just the attendee list, this is Kamran Beg. The attorney present, I think, was Ms. Kim. But in my version of the minutes, it listed someone else.
It says that Paul Briggs was present the last time. Do we have a clarification as to who that was?
We'll check with that.
This is Google Chrome. But I already had a Google Chrome. Get it in Chrome.
That was unintelligible.
Linda?
I did get it in Chrome, but I put in my name.
Well,
all the time.
we can make a motion that we can verify with the video which attorney was there and then amend the minutes as necessary.
And asked to join.
Or we can table this until next month.
Or we could do that too. Because we can verify that with the video.
Would there be a motion to table? I'll make a motion to table the.
I make a motion.
Okay. Mr. Lateif made a motion. Is there a second on the motion to table?
Yeah, I second it, Kamran.
Normally on this, we would just ask all approved for this type of motion, but since we're all separate and the clerk needs to know who's voting, I would ask if we could please call the roll.
Mr. Frary,
Yes.
Mr. Lateif,
Yes.
Ms. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Big,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes, the motion is tabled for 1 month. I would ask if the clerk could please call the first case.
The first case is an update on the appeal by Lotus Solar. Do you want to speak on that?
Did we have any correspondence on that?
Just what was contained in your packets.
Okay.
So,
I would ask that the applicant come forward, state your name and address for the record. Oh, okay, for the solar one. I got it. That is being withdrawn.
that's being withdrawn.
Yep, I thought that was just off altogether. Okay. So that will be deemed withdrawn based on the letter that we received withdrawing the application and the fact that the applicant has frozen the location of the solar panels so that they won't be in violation of the 15-foot height. I would note that there was a letter from counsel for the neighbor, and I would ask that that be included in the record so that it is clear if there's ever an issue with those being made operational again.
Okay.
Any objection to that?
Did anybody have any questions?
No, I'm just assuming that it's all worked out and they don't need a variance according to the letter I read.
Yes.
It's correct.
Okay.
And to
So-
clarify, if it does go above 15 feet and is reconnected, they can certainly make a complaint inspection, and the building inspector would go out there and, based on the record that we have, say, yep, you either have to reset it to 15 and disconnect everything, or come back to the zoning board of appeals.
I would ask that we call the second item on the agenda.
The appeal of Great Day Improvements, agent for a variance from section 220-4, section 220-13, and IC of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskuna, as it applies to the property at 1832 Pawtucket Ave, Niskuna, New York, located in the R2 medium density residential zoning district, to construct a 12-foot by 15-foot sunroom partially within a designated front yard. Section 220-4 defines a corner lot as a lot at the intersection of two streets lines, and explains that each street line shall be considered a front lot line. The property is a corner lot at the intersection of Pawtucket Ave and Newport Ave, a paper street. Section 220-13 Schedule IC requires a 30-foot minimum front yard setback for a single-family dwelling in the R2 medium-density residential zoning district. As proposed, the sunroom will be located 19.7 feet from the front property line along Newport Ave. Therefore, a 10.3-foot front yard setback area variance is required. 13 notices were sent out, 0 responses.
I would ask if the applicant could please come forward, set forth what your application is, and any efforts you made to minimize the need of a variance, or if you still felt you needed a variance, to minimize the size of the variance and impact.
My name is Tony Sadolino. I'm with Great Day Improvements. I believe Michael Riley is on the line also. This variance coming up, Newport Ave, the street in question, is deemed a paper street at the time. It is no longer a street. It is actually a driveway with a home at the end of the driveway. So the actual need for a variance shouldn't be a need for a variance because it's not a corner lot.
I would ask our staff, the street in question, is it still owned by the town, or is it owned by the person who uses it as a driveway?
I would have to ask Mike Riley that question, but I can't.
He's
I can't.
He's on the phone. Mike?
Yeah, I can respond to that.
Yeah, okay.
It is still owned by the town. The Modianos, who use it as their driveway, approached the town and they wanted to pave it for their use. And the town basically disavowed it and said, you know, go ahead and do that if you want to, but we're not going to maintain it or plow it or anything else. So that's what they did. They paved it for their use, and it's exclusively their driveway.
So the town still owns the property, but allowed them to put a driveway in it that they paid for?
What was the question? Did the people who paved it pay for it?
Yeah, the question was, does the town still own the underlying land?
The town still owns it. The people who use it as a driveway paid for the paving, and when there's maintenance required, like tree falls after storms, the folks who use it as the driveway and I share the cost of doing that.
So he says the town still owns it. The people paid to pave it, and the maintenance is split between him and them.
That's correct.
Questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, did I hear that the gentleman was saying that they don't need a variance?
That's his view that they don't need I believe, if I can phrase it, that he feels that they shouldn't need a variance because it's
Okay.
not really a street. Yet I think legally it still is a street. And therefore, the view that he doesn't need a variance, I think he would still need a variance and it would be up to this board.
Yeah. Yep.
So, just to confirm here, are we looking for the 10.3 foot front yard setback area variance is required? Is that because the town owns the lot next to it, or why is that?
Because the town owns that lot and it is on the town maps as a legal street. Even if
Okay.
even though the town has not built a street and has not maintained a street, it is still a legal street. It is owned by the town of Niskayuna, and it would be open to the public to transit, whether or not if they wanted to, I believe.
Okay. And they looking for a variance of 10.3 feet, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And sir, how wide is the sunroom going to be?
12-foot projection from the house out.
And from your application, you can't put it on the other side of the house because there is a chimney on the other side of the house.
Yes.
And could it be put in the backyard?
I did not take pictures of the backyard.
Yeah, let me respond to that. There's an existing deck on the back of the house. If we wanted to put the sunroom there, we'd have to remove the deck.
So he says there's an existing deck off the back of the house, and if they wanted to put the sunroom there, they would have to remove the deck.
And that was the property owner speaking for the record.
Is the deck, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is the deck right now, is that the same size of the room they're trying to build?
That's a
No.
question.
It's not the same. It's not the same size. The back of the house is significantly longer than the house is deep. So the dimensions on the side and the back are different.
Okay.
Other questions from the board?
What is on the other side of Newport Road? Is there a house?
Is a house there.
And is that the side of that house or the front of that house?
It's the side of the house.
And if, assuming for argument's sake that this was a side lot where you're putting the sunroom, would you be in compliance with the side lot setback?
Yes, there's 31.7 feet.
There's a picture here, if you can see it.
Yeah.
The house, the dot with the red dot is the property in question.
The red dot is the property in question. Pawtucket Ave is there. And there's a house directly on the other side of Pawtucket.
And then there's a house towards the backyard, which is the house that uses the street as a driveway.
Correct.
Are you going to have to remove some trees?
No.
And John, if it was a side yard, I do believe it would be in compliance. I think it's R2, so that's 15. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it would be in compliance if it was considered a side yard.
Okay, thank you.
Now, based on looking where the houses are on Hillside, is there any opportunity for the town to ever complete this roadway, Laura?
There are a lot of paper streets in that neighborhood, and if you look at the comprehensive plan, I don't think that there's there isn't a lot of need for connectivity. If it were ever to be done, it would probably be for a developer who wanted to get into some of the landlocked parcels in the back.
Other questions from the board? Hearing no other questions, I would ask if there's anyone in the public who wishes to be heard for or against this application. Hearing no one, and Laura, people have the opportunity now to be able to chime in on this?
Yep.
Okay.
I didn't receive anybody who specifically wanted to speak about this case, but
Okay.
anybody can.
I would ask if any board members wish to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Hoke. I will move that we approve the variance. The applicant has demonstrated that he cannot achieve the benefit through any other feasible means. The rear of the home is inaccessible. There aren't a lot of alternatives of where to put the sunroom. In addition, there's some unique characteristics with respect to this property in that there is basically a driveway next to them, which is a legal road, which is causing them to have a more significant setback than would otherwise be required if it was a side yard. It doesn't appear from the photograph that the addition of the sunroom will result in any undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood. There's significant distance between this property, notwithstanding the reduced setback, and the neighbor on the other side of Newport Road. The variance in the context of all the factors to be considered isn't substantial in this particular situation. Doesn't appear that there's going to be any negative environmental effects from the addition of the sunroom. And while it's certainly self-created, an argument can be made that at the time that the applicant purchased this property, the variabilities with respect to this road weren't known to the applicant. Even if it was determined to be self-created, that's not dispositive of this particular circumstance. For all those reasons, I move to approve the variance.
There's been a motion made. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to second the motion for all the reasons stated by Mr. Hoke. And I do agree that this can be achieved by other means. And they only asking for 12 by 15. And it looks like they looked at other option, and this is the only way they can accomplish this deck. So I make a second, I motion a second.
A motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I would ask if the clerk could call the roll.
Mr. Ferrari,
Yes, for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Latif,
Yes.
Ms. McGinnis,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Begg,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
I'd like the record to reflect that I visited the site. With regard to the pending motion, I would vote yes for the reasons stated.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
I will vote yes for the reasons stated, but I will state that was stated during the motion that the applicant might not have had notice of the condition. That would not be a reason to grant this motion on the basis that the applicant would have had constructive notice of the fact that there was a street there would be a public record. But based on the fact that the town does not seem to have any desire to use that street and the unique nature of this situation, together with the fact that if it was a side yard, that there would not be a need for the variance, I will vote yes. The motion is granted, sir. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much.
Call the next case, please.
The appeal of Janice Lockman for variance from section 220-30B2 and section 220-30B3 of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskuna as applied to the property at 2366 Algonquin Road, Niskuna, New York, located in the R1 low density residential zoning district to maintain a pod longer than code allows. Section 220-B2 states the permits will be granted for a 30-day period. The first 30 days are free, but an applicant must submit a building permit application. For the second 30-day period, the $25 fee is required. At the expiration of the second 30-day period, applicants may seek one renewal for an additional 30 days at the cost of $25. As applied, the portable storage unit is not eligible for any further permit renewals. Therefore, a variance from this section is required. Section 220-30B3 states the portable storage unit and temporary bulk waste containers are prohibited from being placed in streets or in the front yard of the property. Portable storage units and temporary bulk waste containers kept in the driveway of the property must be in the furthest accessible point from the street without blocking entrance or exits of any pedestrian doors or accessory structures. All locations must be paved off-street surfaces. The location of the portable storage unit is currently within the front lawn. Therefore, a variance from this section is required. 11 notices were sent, 3 responses, and Laura's going to read those responses.
Laura?
Oh, good.
This is
I was
Jana.
just calling you to
So,
make
yeah.
sure you can hear. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
I
mute
know
your-
you were, and I didn't want to answer because I unmuted myself. So go ahead.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay. So I'll read the comments now. This is from 2366 Algonquin Road to Niskuna Zoning Board of Appeals. While I do not oppose the variance per se, I only ask that it be for a reasonable extension of time with an expiration date that should take into account both the needs of my dear neighbor as well as that of our common neighborhood and its need to be free of any long-term disruption. I trust something along those lines can be found acceptable. Thank you, Arthur Patain. Second note is from Lawrence Edwards, 2369 Algonquin Road. To whom it may concern, I wish to register my strenuous objection to the request for a variance from section 220-30B2 and 220-30B3 of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskuna by Janice Lockman of 2366 Algonquin Road, Niskuna. The pod located on the front lawn of 2366 Algonquin Road is, and has been for months, an eyesore and totally out of keeping with the residential character of one of the most pleasant neighborhoods in the town of Niskuna. The thought of its continued presence and visibility as I enter and leave my house is no longer acceptable. I respectfully request that the board deny Ms. Lockman's request for a variance and that she be directed to remove the pod unit. And the last letter is from Harinda Kingra from 2140 Cayuga Court. Dear Sir or Madam, I'm writing regarding the above caption issue, Janice Lockman Appeal 2366 Algonquin Road. I would like it known that my opinion is the portable storage unit located at this premises should be removed, as it has been located there for longer than the zoning board regulation allows. I walk my dog in the neighborhood, and this unit has been located at the location for a considerably longer period than 90 days granted by the regulation, arguably since last summer. As such, it is not appropriate to allow it to remain. The town codes are established specifically to address these kinds of issues. This homeowner is not in compliance and the unit should be removed. Thank you for your consideration of this letter.
Excuse me. I would ask if the applicant could please come forward and state the reason for your application and what you have done to mitigate the need for a variance, as well as the size of your variance.
Hi, I'm Janice Lockman, and I'm at 2366 Algonquin Road. To mitigate it, one of the issues, A, I'm disabled, but B, actually, I don't think it got, I'm not exactly sure the date it was put in. And again, it was was caused by me. It's more on the side of the yard. It's kind of at an angle. It's not blocking any doorways, any driveways or anything. There's a large tree right kind of next to it. And I couldn't at the time go on the other side as there was a lot of water in the yard, and couldn't put it in the back because I have a very wet kind of yard, especially as you work further back. So I was trying to get some sheds done, but with the snow and everything that occurred, I wasn't able to get that done in time. Therefore, I was applying for a variance, because now we're in a situation where you can't get people to help you. I was going to do it with my son and a friend, but my son lives in my home, but the friend does not. So with the governor's request on COVID and not doing any kind of unnecessary work, I'm kind of in a quandary, but I was going to put in actually 2 sheds, which I had requested. One was going to be behind the house, which has my parents bought this house in the 50s. So it has a cement kind of, it's not really, it's a deck, but it's with fieldstone. It's not a raised deck or anything. And to the right of it, can you hear me? I'm getting a back. I'm hearing myself twice. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. To the right of it is some extra space, which is about 35 feet away from the driveway on the right. And then I was going to add another shed, which if you're facing the house, it would actually be kind of on the right side. The other one would have been on the left. But the one, if you're kind of standing in the backyard, was going to go just beyond or just around that flower bed area. The back of the yard, there's an easement with the town, and it has kind of a sewer system back there, and my entire yard and the back gets very wet. So I'd like to put it in an area that stays dry in general, but doesn't, obviously not causing the shed to, get sunken in the ground at all by any means.
Your application indicates that you purchased the house from somebody who was a hoarder, and that's more than 2 years ago.
No, actually, it was my mom's house. It was an inheritance. It wasn't a purchase. And I actually haven't purchased it. It's still in the trust under my brother's and my name.
Say that again?
It's still in the trust under my brother's and my name.
Okay. So that answers
It's been in the trust.
why the prior owners' things were still in the house for 2 years. It's because it was in the family.
Well, no, actually, yeah, it was in the family, but actually I had multiple other storage areas. I had brought the pot in as I had a yard sale, and I was going to, just use it temporarily to put stuff in it from the yard sale that we were taking out of storage to put in there. And then it poured for the first one. We tried another one, and shortly thereafter it started snowing, and it was virtually kind of impossible for me alone to empty it all out and move forward. So, I do plan on getting it out as soon as I get approval on permitting, and this, these COVID rules are lifted. I'd like to put in 2 sheds, just unload the stuff that's in there into the sheds with help, and then proceed to get it removed.
Your application was actually put in about a month before the COVID state of emergency took effect.
Yeah, but we still had snow, which prohibited me from putting in any sheds as a replacement for this.
Ms. Lockman, this is Keith Frary. I'm a little
Mr.
confused.
Chairman, are we allowed to speak?
Right? Yes, but Mr. Frary started, so why don't we let him speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ms. Lockman, I'm just trying to understand what was the need for getting the pod in the first place? Why did you need the pod?
The garage is full, and I was trying to get rid of stuff. So I took some out of the storage areas, some out of the house, and decided to have a yard sale.
Okay, but you got a pod, you got it for 30 days, you had 2 extensions on it. Were you trying to get rid of things in your house?
Yes.
Okay, why did you move them out of the house and into the pod?
Just because the house is so full.
All right.
Literally.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to understand. Now you're saying you want to build sheds to put the stuff either from the house or the pod in the sheds. How's that alleviating your problem? How's it fixing your problem?
It alleviates it because it gets rid of the pod, and in the sheds I can take some of the stuff out of the garage, and like snow blowers and equipment and that kind of thing, and I can use it for that, along with having stuff to move out of the house. I mean, I'm working as fast as I can. I have a business, a small business, and I'm trying to do this all by myself.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting you're not trying to work on it as best you can. I'm trying to find out. It sounds like you're moving things from point A to point B, and nothing is gotten rid of. The stuff in the pod, can you just get rid of it?
It's only about half full, but some of it's valuable.
Okay.
I mean, you just try and sell it on eBay, I guess, or whatever. But unfortunately, just chucking it probably is not an alternative.
Is there some way to get rid of things in the garage? Is there some way to get rid of things in the garage or house to make the necessity for the pod? You don't need the pod anymore?
That's a great idea. Unfortunately, I have a business and I invented a technology, and I use half my garage I've been developing that. So I have 2 big machines on one side of the garage that I invented. And then on the other side is mostly, the stuff that's like the snow blowers and the, garden stuff and things like that. So it makes it, plus the garage also has boxes in it. I mean, my parents literally had 3 vans at one point and used the vans for storage in the driveway. I mean, I'm talking house head to toe of stuff. I had to live in a hotel to get in the door.
Is it possible?
I'm sorry, Mr. Frary.
Is it possible to use off-site storage for temporarily for the things that because you're renting the pod, right?
Yeah, but the pod's much less expensive. I already pay $700 a month for off-site storage, and prior to me unloading a bunch of stuff at an auction and a yard sale and giving away a bunch of stuff to Goodwill, I was paying over $1,000 a month for storage.
Okay. I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's Maureen. One of the benefits, I think, of the pods is that they are portable and they can be stored someplace else. Is there any chance that you could do that?
I thought about that. Unfortunately, I have a really wet backyard. I probably put in, 20 to 30 loads of dirt.
Oh, I'm not
already.
I'm talking about like the pod people have a place to store it. Like you can fill it up and then take it away.
Oh, no, not the ones I'm using. They're from, I don't know, it's somewhere out in, not Glenville, but it's further. It's near Sacandaga Lake, but they just, they don't really store pods I tried that. I did not try to store it at a storage center though, but I didn't think, I mean, I can't really store it at a competitor site like a pod site or a U-Haul site that already has U-Haul or pods at it. So I'm not really sure the alternatives in that. And to move it full is not, they don't move it full. They won't, I mean, in other words, a pod place would, but the people I'm using came with more of kind of this augmented forklift type truck. So they would not be able to even move it full. They have to move it empty. So I'd be unloading it at that point anyhow. Which I need help to do.
Yeah. Mr. Lateef, you had a question?
Yeah, Mr. Ferry, thank you. You asked a lot of the questions I have, but I want to add a couple questions. You said you're going to do something after this pandemic, and I know this pandemic has been a problem for everybody. What's your plan after this pandemic to do with this portable storage unit? What's your plan?
Actually, my plan was to put in 2 storage sheds, which I sent a plan for, and then unload it and unload, either get rid of some of the stuff, but also unload a portion of the garage into these sheds that were, either winter or summer type equipment, things that I could get out of my garage. Because believe me, I'd much rather have my cars in the garage than have the stuff in there now. So.
Okay,
That was my
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious because, Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering with this pandemic is going on right now, this situation maybe could be postponed or something like this. And also this question could go to Laura because this is a tough situation for somebody trying to unload all this stuff from this pod, and New York State is not allowing right now people to have garage sales and have people around and so on. So how do you guys feel about this?
Well, some of that is a legal question you're asking with regard to how would the town respond. And certain things are stayed, but that's beyond the scope of our decision making as to what the
That's why I'm wondering if there's something we could do.
My concern with regard to a variance.
What is in front of us right now?
We have 2 variances. One to have the pod continue for longer than the time period, and the second to have the pod continue in a spot where it wouldn't otherwise be allowed. And if we were to grant the variance, most of the variances we grant are in perpetuity, and would that be the case here, Ms. Robertson?
I would not recommend that.
I would not recommend that either, but I'm not sure.
What do you recommend, Laura?
To time limit it.
Yeah, I mean, so we do have an application from Ms. Lockman to put up the sheds, but we're unable to issue it because it's not considered essential construction. If you guys were to deny the variance, she would be given a certain time frame to remove the dumpster, and I think that time frame would have to be sensitive to the crisis, but it wouldn't be forever. And if you wanted to grant a second extension, the way the code is written, we're not allowed to grant another one, and each one is for 30 days. But I think that you could probably grant another one for 30 days.
Okay. Or would we be granting a
So
variance?
are we?
Is it possible to be granted based on when the COVID restrictions are lifted and then 30 days?
Well, it's not the COVID restrictions that are the issue. The issue is when the governor authorizes the resumption of non-essential construction, you then can file your permit and build your shed or sheds.
Okay,
as long
and is that going to be related to when, I mean, now it's May 15th, but it doesn't look very positive that may or may not be the case. So, I don't mind whenever that's lifted that, I could try and get started and done.
My suggestion, Mr. Chairman, is that if in fact, rather than, well, I would suggest that there be a time limit of that she has to have the pod removed and finish the remainder of whatever it is she's going to do within 30 days of the lifting of the non-essential construction ban by the governor.
Yeah. Ms. Robertson, I have a question with regard to the town's enforcement practices. Is this something that would be enforced now with regard to the governor's stay of things?
Well,
and it could not get into court now because it wouldn't be deemed an essential matter to get into court.
yeah, and the governor's direction was, as far as code enforcement goes, we do follow up on complaints, but the it has to be done very, like, in the least like in your face way. There's a word for it. I can't think of what it is, but like where we would normally like, oh, go ahead, Keith.
Least restrictive?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So like normally we would post stuff to their door. Now we're not allowed to post stuff to the door. We have to send them mail. And like normally we would give them 7 days to comply. Now we have to be very careful about the time frame that we give people, and it has to be sensitive to what's going on. So it is a longer time frame than we normally would have.
So the enforcement of this during the COVID emergency would not be happening in short order anyway.
That, I mean, that's correct. Like we have to be, and the governor has made it clear, like we have to be sensitive to, you can't just go out there and say, move something like that. It just, that is, you could be creating a non-compliance with that directive. So you have to be careful.
Well, that's why my suggestion that you're not putting it within the control of the applicant. What you're doing is you're saying the governor's lifting of the non-essential construction, she then has 30 days to get her, whatever she's going to do with her shed done, get the pod emptied and get it off the property within 30 days of whatever date that is that he lifts it. Because then you're allowing for her to have a remedy to get the stuff out of there, which in consideration of you know, the restrictions placed on non-essential construction by the governor. That would be my suggestion.
Hey, Laura.
The other thing,
Mr. Ferry is cutting off sometimes, so if you can repeat what he said.
Okay. His suggestion is that there's a potential that the variance could be issued with the condition that it was only good for 30 days following when the governor lifts the non-essential construction.
Oops, the audio just.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The other thing we could look at would be to table this motion until the COVID emergency is over. And that way we wouldn't ever need to actually deal with a variance and put a variance in that somebody might try to argue would be in perpetuity.
But I'd like to say that this problem predates COVID. COVID just happens to be what happened right now, but this pod has been there illegally much longer. And I'm concerned about the neighborhood and the neighbors.
But I actually came in before the expiration and discussed that and was told to fill out. You know, I came in to pay you literally about 5 days before that 90-day period was up and was told that I would have to apply for an appeal, which is what I did. And wrote a check, and that's what I did. In the interim, by the time I was given a date, which was March, what were we really gonna meet? By the time I was given a date to appear or to express myself.
But I did see Paul Briggs join. Paul?
I saw him join and I saw him exit.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Yeah. My suggestion would be to table this so we never even have to deal with, we potentially wouldn't have to deal with granting a variance because I don't think the town is going to be the town can't go to court right now and enforce this because of the fact that it would be a non-essential judicial matter. And without that enforcement power right now, it would seem that if we table this motion and we get past the end of the, if things loosen up on May 15th, which is a possibility, that the applicant would be able to resolve the matter and withdraw her application without us having to consider the variance.
But the problem is, Mr. Chairman, the problem is you've now lost control.
Right.
You table this motion, take it off the table, or this variance, and you take it off the table. What's your time frame? Who decides when to put it back on?
No, it would be put back on next month.
Okay.
So,
Well, isn't
The
that really
issue is-
the governor and what he states? I mean, I would think that none of us are really in control as to the point when the COVID stuff is going to end.
Ma'am,
So,
are there heavy objects in the pod?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, there are.
so it's not things that you can pick up and carry into the house yourself?
No,
Is it things that your son would be able to carry into the house?
no. It needs two people at least, and I can't do it with him. I have severe nerve damage in my right leg.
Ms. Lockman, how did the items get into the storage unit in the first place?
They went in after the sale, and I threw a bunch in the car to go to Goodwill. And
No, but who
then
physically?
the second sale.
Miss Lockman, I'm sorry, Miss
friends.
Lockman. Miss Lockman,
three friends.
three friends. And could they
Yep.
help you? Could they still? Are they local?
Yeah, but most people are not really eager about getting out to help you during
Okay.
this time anyhow.
So my only caution to tabling it to the next meeting would be that normally when we table something, we table it because of a lack of information or a specific follow-up that needs to occur. So I think that if we're going to table it, we should have a specific reason and follow-up information that we need for the next meeting.
Well, the information that we need for the next meeting is that the applicant would be able to give us a time frame with the COVID virus emergency possibly being lifted, and the applicant cannot give us a time frame right now with the COVID virus emergency.
Why don't
I'm not
we give her a time frame?
Because I'm not sure that we can put a time frame on an area variance.
Well, the
That's my
area variance,
We can put a condition on it. We put conditions on area variances all the time. The condition look, the applicant has already said she has a plan to eliminate the necessity for the pod. Unfortunately, because of the governor's pause order, she's not able to get a permit and have anybody construct it. So by not being able to have anybody construct it, she's in a catch-22. That's why we need to condition. You're not even conditioning. You're allowing the pod to stay in place, and then 30 days afterwards, then she's got to have it out and done, and then the town can enforce it at that point.
Well, that's
My
fine.
question still remains: are we allowed to put a time frame on an area variance? As opposed, is that a condition?
It's a condition, Mr. Chairman. It's a condition.
so I think you can, because the code that's cited is actually the building permit can't issue another renewal. So I think that you, as a board, could allow the building department to issue another renewal of 30 days when the non-essential construction is being lifted. But I also think that you could motion to table based on needing to understand the time frame and not having all the information right now. I think you could do it either way. The other thing is obviously the pod is in the front yard. When you're granting that, you know, you might want to look, or if you would want to look at how you're restricting that. It would obviously go away once the pod.
Yeah, it's actually on the side yard at an angle.
Miss Lashman?
We could not understand that.
Oh, okay, question.
I can't understand
Question for
what was
Miss
that.
Lashman.
I'm not hearing anything.
Mr. Latif, go ahead.
Yeah, Miss Lashman, I have a question for you. If we were to approve you, since we can as a board approve another 30 days, would 30 days be able to give you enough time to do what you have to do with it?
30 days after the essential, after that would be probably enough time to do what I needed to do, absolutely.
Okay,
And
and
get
Laura,
the
this
pod
question
removed.
back to you. Are we able to, as a zoning board, to give her another 30 days?
Yes, because that's actually the code that is being cited for. It's a very interesting code that the denial is based off of, but it's based.
We're not granting a variance to unit there. What we would be doing is granting a variance to allow the building department allow a 30-day permit.
A third renewal.
Right, and I think that's what Mr.
It was denied based on the fact that we could not issue a third renewal.
Okay. If we were to do it that way, where we're doing a variance for a third renewal, a third 30-day renewal, as opposed to a variance to allow the unit to remain, I think that is then workable. Because then the permit is what's allowing it to, the 30-day permit is what would be allowing it to remain, as opposed to the variance.
Exactly.
So in 30 days, what happens? I mean, would it just be re-extended if for some reason the restrictions for the governor were still in effect?
I think that you'd have to do a variance for another 30 days for another extension.
Okay, so it would be 30 days from tomorrow, for example?
That I don't know. That would be depending on when a permit was granted. That's beyond the scope of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a valid question. That is that 30 days beyond the time that the governor lifts the non-essential work, or is it from today? Because otherwise that 30 days is meaningless because it's already passed.
Well, I think it's a variant. What we're doing, if the way I'm hearing us talk now, it would be a motion to grant the building department the authority to grant a 30-day permit. And then it would
the
be
building
30
department,
days.
the building department would determine whether it's after the governor lifts the restrictions.
No, I think the building department would grant a 30-day application, and then if it went beyond, it might require to do this again.
And how would we correct anything? How would we corrected this, Mr. Chairman?
I'm trying to keep it procedurally accurate.
Well, you can be procedurally accurate, and as I understand what Laura's told us, the governor has advised zoning boards and building departments to be cognizant of the restrictions that have been put in place by the state.
Yes.
This woman has a plan of how she's going to eliminate the need of a pod, but of no making of her own, she's unable to proceed with it.
So then I think what we might be able to do is do a variance, or do a motion to allow the building department to grant renewals of their permit for 30 days after the lifting of the emergency, as opposed to us setting a time frame. that the building department would have to do their 30-day application. Now, Laura, is the building
Do the
department able to
30-day
issue
application.
What? Laura, is the building department even open to do these applications and permits?
So technically, we're not issuing building permits right now unless it's emergency or essential construction. So I just tried calling the lawyers because potentially we couldn't issue the building permit until the construction ban was lifted. And then from that point on, it would be 30 days. And that solves all problems. The only thing that I'm just not clear about is because it's existing right now, I don't know how that affects being essential or non-essential. But my guess would be that the building permit couldn't be issued until the construction ban was lifted, in which case that would be the point of the 30 days. But you could also like authorize 2 extensions, which would be for 60 days.
Okay.
This is Rick Green speaking. If I may just weigh in, and I'm appreciative of the robust discussion that we're having, and I'm appreciative of the information that Ms. Latchman is providing us to assist us. I'm thinking, and I think this has been suggested by someone else, perhaps not, but from the date of the lifting of the non-essential construction work ban, plus 30 days equals the deadline Ms. Latchman to remove the pot.
That would be great.
Any other questions from the board? Anyone in the public who wants to be heard? I would ask if any board members wish to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. We approve this variance, and I'm just gonna say it this way. I think the ban is gonna be lifted on May 15, so I would say to grant an additional 30 days after it's lifted on May 15, so that should give Ms. Lashman enough time from that date to be able to remove that portable storage unit. And I think with the COVID and all the stuff is going on with New York State laws and some of the burden that she's been having, I think I will allow the 30 days to be granted.
Point of order, are you including your motion that motion is to allow the building department to grant a 30-day permit from the end of the COVID period?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking, that's why I'm adding to, I'm not sure if I have to amend it. Do I have to amend it, or is that okay?
I don't think so. You made a point of order as to what was meant, and it would then be the point of order would then be the permit that would allow the pod to be there, and not our motion. Our motion is merely allowing the permitting. With that,
Exactly.
I would if there's a second to that motion in that form.
Yeah, I would second it. This Kamran Beg.
Okay.
I'd like to hear what the quote unquote form we're talking. What is the motion?
The motion is to allow the building department to grant a 30-day permit from the termination of the COVID emergency.
Right.
Chairman,
Which I think it's May 15.
Guys, just a clarification.
We don't know what-
The building
The
permit can be
COVID
issued-
emergency?
Yes. Ms. Robertson, you were trying to talk?
The building permit can't be issued without a variance to the pod being allowed in the front yard. It was done so in error before. I think we had an incorrect map. So the motion would have to include allowing the pod to remain in its location for the 3rd extension. And I would just, sometimes our lifting of the construction ban, sometimes it takes a day or two for us to get the governor's orders and for our government to then take the next step. So I would just probably caution that you might want to consider it being instead of when the governor lifts the construction ban, when the town of Niskayuna lifts the construction ban.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Latif, would you agree to that amendment?
Yes, I would like to add that this portal storage unit to remain in the front. And I'd like to add, after the Niskiuna, send a email or announce lifting of the COVID new law.
And as a point of order, Mr. Latif, as a point of order, Mr. Latif, when you say for it to remain in the front, that's only for the period of the extended permit. Is that correct?
Exactly, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Laura, I think we lost Mr. Fredman.
He got kicked off once before. If you give him a second, he should be able to get right back on.
Okay.
Now, will I be notified at what point?
So sorry, Janice, this is what we talked about, and I know it's very hard to understand in a virtual meeting, but the board has entered their deliberation. So offline, when they're finished with their motions and their voting, like you can reach out to the planning board to the building department and follow up with us. But right now they're in deliberations.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Can you tell when he's back or no?
I can tell. Should pop up because he signed in under 2 names.
Okay.
I'm just gonna call him really fast. Hold on.
Please state your name after the tone and go.
This is Rick Green speaking. Band Choir, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, Rick.
All right, thank you.
Keith, do you want to temporarily take over as acting chairman, and I can see if I can get Fred on the phone?
Is Fred get booted off?
Yeah, he got booted off.
Yeah, sure. I'm just, if we may, I just want to make sure that I understand before we look for a second or we vote. I'm trying to understand exactly what the motion is for a 30-day extension starting on, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Latif.
Thank you. After it's lifted, 30 days after it's lifted, and also I'd like to add it's lifted by the Niskiuna instead of the state. Because
right, when Niskiuna receives notification of the lifting of the non-essential construction ban, correct?
Exactly. I just want to make sure, because that's what Laura was talking about, that Niskiuna takes a couple days sometime to send it.
Rick Green,
the 30-day extension. Go ahead.
Rick Green, I think that sounds very reasonable.
Okay. So the motion on the table is for a 30-day extension commencing on the receipt of Niskiuna of the lifting of the non-essential construction ban from the governor.
Exactly.
I think it's the 30-day extension by the building department, authorizing the building department to give the 30 days.
But once the Niskiuna tell the building department, that becomes all over the town, right, Laura?
That's my understanding of what she said, was that it takes several days to receive the notification from the governor.
Exactly. And the only thing I added, Mr. Ferry, is to keep the portable storage unit on the property for that 30 days. So this way.
Right, in its current location.
Exactly. So I think we need a second motion if everybody.
Yeah, I had seconded it. This is Kamran. I
Okay.
just
Oh,
want
it
to
is?
clarify
Wow.
that this board is not giving the extension. The board is just saying that the building department is authorized to give an extension, is how I understand it.
We're granting or authorizing the building department, but it's conditioned.
Right.
Right,
It's got conditions attached to it.
okay. Yeah.
Okay, guys, Fred is on the phone, so he's going to keep trying to connect, but he can also run it watching and speaking through the phone. Continue.
Okay.
So where are we at? Do we?
Motion was made, and there was a second, but then there were amendments to the motion. Do we have a second right now?
Yes, it's big.
Okay. Since I missed part of it, can somebody just state what everyone's understanding of the motion is right now?
Mr. Chairman, the motion is that we keep the portable storage on the property in the same location. Also,
No, I understood that Mr. Latife, if I may, I understand that the motion is to allow the building department to issue a permit to allow that, to renew a permit that would be a 30-day permit. That's what I understand the motion is. Not for us to say it's all right, but for the building department to issue a permit allowing it.
yes, that's correct.
Okay. And that motion was seconded?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, the only
Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Chairman, the one thing we added that the lifting for non-essential worker to be by Niskiuna, not
Not on the state.
right.
Right. Yes, that I was still here for that. Okay. So would there be further discussion on the motion as I'm trying to get logged back in? Hearing no further discussion, I would ask if the clerk could call the roll.
Mr. Frary,
Yes, on the motion as conditioned and amended, yes.
Mr. Latife,
Yes.
Ms. McGinnis,
I vote no.
Mr. Baig,
Yes,
Mr. Green,
I'd like the record to reflect that I performed a site visit. With regard to the pending motion, yes, with the conditions and as amended, and for the reasons stated.
Mr. Hoke? Do we still have Mr. Hoke?
I vote, yeah, I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself. I vote yes, and I just like it to be known that my vote is almost solely based upon the extremely unique circumstances of the current COVID-19 restrictions.
Chairman Goodman?
I will vote yes on the motion for the reasons stated, and I will also say, as Mr. Hope did, that it is for only the cause of the current COVID crisis and the fact that we are not granting a variance to allow the structure or the cost, but granting a variance to allow the building department to issue a 30-day permit only. Based on that, I would vote yes. So the motion carries. I wanted to thank everyone for their time for this motion this evening, and I would ask if we could call the next case, please.
Thank you.
The appeal of Great Day Improvement Agent for a variance from section 220-13, Schedule IA of the zoning ordinance the town of Niskuna as it applies to the property at 1209 Ferry Road, Niskuna, New York, located in the RR Rural Residential Zoning District, to maintain an 11 by 15 foot screen room and 12 foot 5 inch by 15 foot deck, partially within a designated rear yard setback. Section 220-13 Schedule IA requires a 40-foot minimum rear yard setback. As constructed, the screen room is located approximately 1 foot from the rear property line. Therefore, a 39-foot rear yard setback variance is required. The deck extends to the property line. Therefore, a 40-foot rear setback variance is required. 7 notices were sent out. 1 response. We also received a county referral, which deferred to local consideration, and Ms. Robertson will read the letter. Ms. Robertson?
I'm sorry, can we pause the meeting for 1 second? Fred's gonna try dialing the phone number.
Okay.
Okay. I apologize. I know that this is a cumbersome way to get through these cases. They've been waiting for over 2 months, so we felt like it was worth a shot. And I appreciate you guys' patience.
Hello?
Hey, Fred.
Hello, Chairman Goodman.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, good.
My apologies for the
Welcome
technical difficulties.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Okay, we're calling the next case?
Yes. Linda called the next case, and I'm going to read the comment letter into the record if that's okay with you, Chairman Goodman.
Yes.
Okay. This letter is from Timothy and Carol Hartman of 1205 Ferry Road. We, to the Zoning Board of Appeals, we, Timothy and Carol Hartman, are the adjoining property neighbors of Marco and Maya Aimee. We fully approve of and support the addition of a screen room and a deck in their rear yard. Thank you for your consideration.
Oh, and is that the only letter?
Yes.
Okay. I would then ask the applicant to come forward, state their name and address, their application, what it is, and what efforts were made to mitigate the need for a variance.
Okay, my name is Tony Satalino with Great Day Improvements. There is an existing deck on the back of the house. The home is built very close to an overflow of the river, not the actual river. But there are no places on the front side or other side of the house that the addition can be built. The rear of the house, which faces the overflow, has a deck on it already. The house was placed 12 feet from the property line. The previous owners built a deck right up to the property line. There are no other homes behind the actual home, in between the home and the overflow. So we're trying to get a 39-foot relief, which actually just goes out into the overflow. I do have some pictures. The home itself had an addition put on the front of it, which was, we can't put an addition on that addition. Yeah, and on this, the sides are too close to the setback requirements. So the rear is the only place that this could be put on an existing deck. This is a picture of the pre-existing deck. It's been there for a very long time, and it is in need of rehab because of the slope of the property going down to the overflow. The footings that are there had moved, so something has to be done with the footings to maintain the safety of the existing deck, which we would be putting new footings in that would go down and secure the existing deck. And then we would build on top of that existing deck, which is 1 foot from the property line, but does not affect any other property other than the overflow of the river.
So if you put this anywhere else, you'd be in danger of flooding from the river?
The whole house is in the flood zone.
Yeah, for the record, this is actually sits between an area of the main channel of the river and a offshoot of the river. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What's commonly called Niska Isle, even if it's not a complete island?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
That's correct. There's some debate amongst the neighbors. This is Mark Alamy. I'm a resident of 1209 Ferry Road. That is correct, yeah.
Okay. Are there questions from the board members?
Yeah, this is Rick Green. The only people that could, if this application is granted, where essentially you're swapping out a screen room for a deck. You can only see this if you're on the Niska Isle Bridge, correct? In other words, you can't see it. You can't see it from Rosendale Road, right?
That's correct.
And who else could see it beside, obviously, the homeowners at 1209 Ferry Road? Anybody else?
No one.
The only other would be our neighbors, which was 1205, which was the ones that entered the comment into the record.
And they are, this home is much closer. They may be able to see a piece of it, but it's not an obstruction.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Keith Frary. So am I understanding that you're rehabbing the deck or replacing it?
Rehabbing, bringing it up to engineering standards and building on top of existing. The wood structure of the deck is in good shape. The footings are not.
Are you making the footprint any bigger or any different?
No.
Okay, so it's essentially the same footprint of the existing deck. It's just rehab and some replacement.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
This is Mr. Lotaif. I got a question for you. So you're asking for 40-foot setback variance. Did you consider to make the screen smaller since you are taking down the deck?
We're not taking down the deck. We are adding footings to the existing deck. The existing footings are actually moving. So the deck, whether we put a sunroom on it or not, does require new footings. Absolutely requires new footings. The deck existing footings are currently very slowly moving. They are leaning out towards the river because of the slope of the property. We will be putting new techno posts metal footings under the existing deck going down below frost with stamped engineered drawings. And whether we were putting a sunroom on the deck or not, those footings need to be addressed.
This is Mr. Green again. So you're propping up the deck and you're going to put a screen room on top of the deck, and the size of the screen room is the same size as the deck. Do I have that correct?
The same size as the existing deck and no larger.
Thank you.
Back to me, Mr. Lataif. So you have an 11 by 15 right now, or is it 12 by 15?
The existing deck, I believe, is 12 by 15, and the proposed sunroom is 11 by 15, and that was to have the load-bearing wall over the existing beam that was there with the footings underneath it. So we're choosing to eliminate 1 foot of the deck to maintain structural load over an existing beam.
Okay, so again, back to my question, to reduce your variance, there's any chance you can reduce the size of your screen, or that's not possible? Would you consider reducing the size, since you are already reducing it by a foot, it looks like? Would you be able to reduce it by 3 feet, by 4 feet?
Well, then your load-bearing point is no longer useful. We reduced it by 1 foot to allow that wall to be over the structural load-bearing point of the existing deck. If you reduced it by 3 feet, your load-bearing point would not have structural footings underneath it.
I see. All right, thank you.
So good.
Any other questions from the board? Anyone in the public who wants to be heard for or against the application? Hearing none, I would ask if any member of the board wishes to make a motion.
Yeah, this is Mr. Frary. I move that we approve the variances requested. This is a unique situation, both from the structure of the house and deck, and also where it's located, so close to the runoff of the river. I don't think we're replacing the existing footprint of the deck with the same area, making a few improvements. It's going to improve in terms of, from both, I assume, a safety standpoint and an aesthetic standpoint with the improvements that are being made. It's not going to change the character of the neighborhood because it's existed already for a substantial period of time. Because of the proximity, it can't be put anyplace else on the lot. So there are no other options other than the one that's proposed. For those reasons, I move we grant the variance.
A motion has been made. Is there a second to the motion?
Hi, this is Maureen. I second the motion for the reasons stated, and especially because of the unique location of the property and the neighborhood.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I would ask if we could call the roll.
Mr. Lataif, Mr. Frary,
Yes.
Mr. Lataif, we don't hear you, Mr. Lataif.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm voting yes, and for all the reasons stated.
Ms. McGinnis,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Baig,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Please have the record reflect that I performed a site visit with regard to the pending motion to grant the variance. I vote yes.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes, for the reasons stated. I want to thank you for your time this evening. The variance is granted.
Thank you.
Thank you. If we could call the next matter, please.
The appeal of Barbara Johnston for a variance in section 220-25B1A and section 220-18B3C of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskuna as it applies to the property at 17 Rosemary Drive, Niskuna, New York, located in the R2 medium density residential zoning district, to maintain a 6-foot fence in the side yard and an 8-foot by 10-foot replacement shed within the designated rear yard setback. Section 220-1A permits the maximum height for fences located in the front and side yards to be 4 feet. As constructed, a 6-foot fence is located in the side yard, therefore a 2-foot fence height variance is required. Section 22-18B3C states that minor accessory structures are not permitted closer than 5 feet to the side or rear lot lines. As defined, minor accessory structures are detached accessory buildings or other structures 120 square feet in area. The shed at 80 square feet is a minor accessory structure. As constructed, the shed has a 0-foot rear yard setback, therefore a 5-foot rear yard setback variance is required. 8 notices were sent, 0 response.
I would ask if the applicant could come forward, state your name, address, the reason for your application, what efforts you made to mitigate the need for a variance.
Barbara Johnson, can you hear me?
Yes.
17 Rosemary Drive. I'm coming forward to ask for a variance for my shed. I've had the shed on the property since 2004. And the shed or the property originally was owned by Frank Barbera. And I have a letter from Frank stating, I don't know if you can see this or not. You have it in your packet, stating that the shed had never caused a problem for him all the time he owned it. And he has deeded the property. It's considered forever wild behind my house. And he has deeded the property over to Niskuna in recent years.
You indicated that the shed has been there since before the town owned the property behind you.
Since 2004.
Did you ever own that property behind you?
No.
Did you have a building permit when you put the shed up?
No.
And did you request a variance at the time you put the shed up to put it there?
No. No.
And when was the fence put in?
The fence was put in last year.
And did you have a building permit for the fence?
I did a permit for the fence after I put it in.
Okay. And had there ever been a variance for a 6-foot fence there?
No. This fence is on the extended part of my property, not the original part of the property.
Any members of the board have questions at this time?
Yeah, well, what does it mean when she said it's on the extended part of the property? I don't understand that piece.
Can you see this paper?
We can see a paper. We can't see what it has on.
Oh, you have it in your packet. It's
Yeah.
exhibit number 2. It's on, I built a sunroom that was done several years ago with permits, and underneath is a storage area. It's built onto the storage area, not the original property.
Ma'am, Ms. Johnson, you indicated that you had a building permit when you put the fence up?
No, no, I have a I added it after the fence. I didn't realize I had to have one for the fence. I'm sorry.
Did somebody put the fence up for you?
Yes.
Was there some company or somebody who came and put the fence up? Or did just a friend or an individual or a contractor? Who was it?
A friend put it up for me.
Okay. And your friend put it up without a building permit.
Right.
You do understand that where the fence is, because it extends forward past the rear corner of the house. And I'm looking at the diagram, the one that has the dog run, the 2 sheds, and the house, okay?
Okay.
And then you've got the storage room, which just looks like, is that what you were saying was an addition off the back of the house?
Yes.
And when was that put up?
Oh, that was put up years ago, 10 years ago.
Okay, and then what caused you to put up the fence last year? Why did you put the fence up last year? Did you replace an existing fence?
I had a cheaper fence and my dog could see out. And so I wanted a fence that my dog couldn't see.
Okay, and did you replace everything that was around the dog run that's marked on this? Or around the whole property?
On the dog run, we put up, coverings, but no, we just put this fence right here. Hope I'm answering it right for you.
No, that's fine. I'm just trying to figure out where right here is.
It's.
I'm trying to look at the extent of the fence as a whole. Does the fence go all the way around your back property?
No, it goes out about 12 feet.
And what's it connect to?
It just ends.
Okay, is there a reason the fence can't be moved back? If it just goes out 12 feet and ends, is there a reason it can't be moved back to the corner of your, what's marked your storage room?
Well, it would be difficult. I'd have to, it's cemented in. It would be difficult.
So as I understand that fence, the fence that sits before the back corner of the storage room is just that one section right there, right? Doesn't connect anything, just goes out and ends.
That's it.
And other than the fact that the posts are in cement, other than that, it could be moved back.
It could be moved back, but it's on an extension. It's not on the original foundation.
No, I understand that. I'm looking at a picture of it, what I believe is a picture of it. Is that an air part of your HVAC system or something that's sitting outside that's all covered up?
Yes.
Is there anything, as we look at this picture, is there anything on the other side which prevents it from being moved back to the rear corner?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And if it was in the rear corner, it wouldn't require a variance.
No, but on this particular picture, from what I've read and what they've told me, it doesn't require variance because it's not on the original part of the house. It's on an extension of the property.
But it's still part of the house now.
Pardon?
But it is part of the house now.
The building department's determination was that it's not the rear corner of the house. So that's why the fence is being brought to the zoning board, because the addition is substantial and it's considered part of the house. So in order to be brought into conformance, the fence would have to be moved to the back corner of the extension, or it would require a variance from the zoning board.
All right.
Miss Johnson?
Yes.
I heard you talking and answering some of the question from Mr. Ferry. And how high is that fence on the picture number 2?
6 feet.
6 feet. And I see inside there's a door. Where does that door go to?
My storage unit.
To the house. It looks like that door goes to a house, no?
Well, underneath it is a storage unit.
Underneath the,
The sunroom is above, and then there's a storage unit.
okay, so the sunroom has, you have access, there's a door to the sunroom?
On the other side.
On the inside?
Yes.
Okay, and it looks like you have, which Mr. Ferry was asking you about, the air conditioning, it's covered in there. That's on the outside. How do you access to the air conditioning on the outside? Do you go around the house?
You mean to get to that air conditioning unit?
Yes.
I can come out my front door and walk around the house. I can come out my back door. I have a deck, and I can come down and walk
Okay.
around and come to it.
Okay, now tell me, how far is this fence and your door to the end of the house? How far is that?
To what end? That fence goes out about 12 feet.
Not out, I want to, like, you see where that door is on the sunroom, you said?
Yes.
To the end of your house, how far is that?
You mean where it's blue and then where it's white?
Yeah, to the end of that sunroom.
Oh, the end of the sunroom is probably another 8 feet.
Okay, so the question we have for you, would you be willing, and can you move that fence to the end of that sunroom? And
I could do that.
okay, Laura? Laura, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Laura?
Yes.
Okay, Laura, just a quick question. The sunroom, when it was built, did they have to get a permit for that?
Yes, it's permitted. Yep.
It is permitted, so it is considered the end of the house, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Johnson, so if you are willing to move that, how much would that cost you to move? Would that be a problem to move it to the end of the house?
Well, what I would do is go 4 feet. I'd make that fence 4 feet.
Would that be a hardship to make that part of the fence 4 feet?
Well, I don't know. I'd have to figure it out. I know it's cemented in, but I'd have to have somebody come over and look at it.
Okay.
Are the posts would be cemented in? Are the panels just bolted to the posts?
Yes.
So the post could be altered to a 4-foot post. So the section could be altered to a 4-foot section.
Yes.
Okay.
If I had to.
Other questions from the board?
Well, Mr. Chairman, are we looking to, it sounds like she's willing to do something. Can she tell us what she proposed to do? So this way we can amend this?
Yeah, she can do that.
Ms. Johnson, would you be willing to tell us what would you like to do different from what you proposed for the variance?
If I have to, I would go with a 4-foot fence and leave it where it's at.
Okay. And you also have the variance application for the shed.
Yes.
Is it possible to have that shed move the 5 feet into compliance?
That would be difficult.
And why would it be difficult?
It would just, it's on a wooden platform. It's on the original platform. It's been on since 2004. It would just be very difficult to move it.
Had there been a shed on that location before this one?
Pardon?
Was there a shed at this location before this one?
Yes.
And was it on that exact location?
Yes.
Or would there be anything in our records that would show that there was a shed there on that exact location, and if that had been had a variance?
Well, the only record I have, Barbera owned it before you. He gave it to the town. I don't know when he did that, probably in the last 5 years, but he owned it prior, and he said there was no problem at all with my shed. I have Exhibit 3 from him.
But I'm asking Robertson if there had been a variance for a prior shed on that location.
I can double check for you, but I don't believe so. I think the former shed was probably put up without a building permit. The land that, just to clarify, the land that Frank Barbera owned is the land behind it. It's part of like a Forever Wild area that was part of the subdivision.
And he probably bought that land at some point, putting up the subdivision.
It was a trade-off because I think it's not her lot, but where that land came from, I think was an average density development.
Okay. So if there was a shed there before, it was a non-conforming shed. And based on looking at this, this house was built in the mid-1980s?
Yes.
Okay. So that would be after the zoning ordinance went into effect. And how long have you lived in the home?
89.
89? So you were the second owner probably?
Yes.
Was there a shed on that property when you bought it?
No.
So you put the first shed there. Had you applied for a variance or a building permit when you put the first shed there?
No.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions from the board?
So, Mr. Chairman, are we voting then on only one item on this?
No, she has two applications in front of us. Right now, we're not voting on anything because there's no motion.
Right.
I'm asking if there's other questions from the board before I ask the public for any comments.
Right. So the question I have for Mrs. Johnson, just to confirm, Mrs. Johnson, you're saying you'll be willing to go to 4 feet and keep it where it is?
Yes.
And you know, just if you keep the 6 feet and you move it to the back of the house, then you don't need a variance.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And you also know that if you moved the shed 5 feet, you wouldn't need a variance.
Right.
Chairman Goodman,
Yes.
the fence along the, not the part that comes out the side of the house, but the part that swings to the backyard also has to be adjusted.
And that's still the side yard there?
Yeah, till it
Okay.
gets behind the structure.
Because, yes, I understand. It has to be behind the structure for it to be the backyard.
To go up to the 6 foot.
Yes. Oh. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to be heard for or against this application? Hearing none, I would ask if any members of the board wish to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Lataif. I make a motion to, first of all, I'm going to do two things separately because the first item, it looks like Mrs. Johnson's already, do we have to amend this, Mr. Chairman, or what? The first one?
No, she's indicated that if she had to, she would she would go down to a 4-foot fence. So if she went down to a 4-foot fence, there would not be a need for a variance.
Right. So I'm going to do both at once and just, I'm going to say that the first item is already agreed by the applicant that she is going to move it or make it into 4 feet fence. So the variance is not needed. Is that correct?
That would be correct, but we need to make a motion on her application, or
Right.
she would withdraw the application, one or the other. Ma'am, do you wish to withdraw the application for the 6-foot variance?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Yes.
She's withdrawn the application for the 6-foot variance. So the only thing currently before us would be the application to have the shed where it is. So I would ask if there's any board members who wish to make a motion with regard to the shed.
So I'm still making the motion for the shed. I'm going to say, I make a motion to approve the shed for where Mrs. Johnson had it. The shed is already up there and it's been there. Mrs. Johnson did not know that she needed a permit at the time for this shed. Can this benefit be achieved by other means feasible to the applicant? It doesn't look like she can because she already put it on and it's already there and it will be a burden to remove it. any undesirable changes in the neighborhood. She got a letter from the neighbor that there's no problem having the shed there.
Mr. Latai, you know that neighbor is a former landowner, not a current landowner.
Right, and the former, I'll have to say the former, whether the request is substantial, there's not enough room in there to do anything. She's only asking for 5 feet. So it's not a problem. It is unfortunately the way where it's sitting, that it's a 0 feet rear yard setback. Whether the request will have adverse physical, it will not have any adverse physical on the environment. And whether alleged difficulty is self-created, I have to say it was self-created, but unfortunately, it's already been done, and she's not able to move it anywhere else on the property. For all these reasons, I move to approve this variance.
A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Chairman, I will second the motion to approve. I would note, however, that I do believe that there's alternate feasible means to resolve the issue. And I don't believe that the fact that the shed is on the location as it exists now because of the applicant's noncompliance with the code would be a basis to grant the variance in and of itself. I wouldn't want to encourage applicants to bootstrap the board by, and I'm not indicating that Ms. Johnston intended to do this, but I wouldn't want anybody to feel like they could bootstrap the board by creating a situation on the ground, and then we couldn't subsequently undo it. So I do believe that there's alternate feasible means that could obviate the need for a variance. However, I think other factors in consideration, most notably that the 5-foot variance will not create an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. In my estimation, it borders a forever wild area, and therefore, coupled with the fact that I don't believe that the variance is substantial and will not have any physical or environmental effects on the neighborhood, a balancing of the factors lead me to the conclusion that the variance can be granted in this situation. So for those reasons, I would second Mr. Lataif's motion.
A motion has been made and seconded. Is there a discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Frary,
Yes, for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Lataif,
Yes.
Ms. McGinnis,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Begg,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Please have the record reflect that I performed a site visit. I'm swayed here for the reasons that have been stated, and therefore vote yes on the motion to approve the application for a variance concerning the shed.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairman Goodman.
For the reasons stated, I will vote yes on the motion, but I will also reiterate the statements that Mr. Hoke made with regard to failure to get a permit and failure to comply at the time, and putting up a non-conforming structure is not enough reason to ever grant the variance. With that, ma'am, the variance is granted. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Good luck, Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you.
I would ask if the clerk could call the next case, please.
Appeal of Lucas Cardinelli for a variance from section 220-4, section 220-13, schedule IC of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskuna as it applies to the property at 201 Graylock Avenue, Niskuna, New York, located in the R2 medium density residential zoning district, to construct a new house within the designated front yard setback. Section 220-4 states the corner lots, each street line shall be considered a front lot line. The property is actually fronts on 3 streets, Graylock Avenue, Becker Street, and Fagan Ave. Section 220-13 Schedule IC requires a 30-foot minimum front yard setback. As proposed, the house would be located 16 feet from the front property line along Fagan Avenue. Therefore, a 14-foot front yard setback variance is required.
They call your name? Yes.
0 responses.
I would ask if the applicant could come forward, just state your name and address for the record, the reasons for your application, and any efforts you made to mitigate the need for the application.
Hey, hi, my name is Luke, and this is my wife, Angie Giardinelli. We bought this piece of land, and we had it engineered for a house, for a single-family home, and to accommodate myself, my wife, my son, and her mother. And the size of the house we come up with just ends up being, works out to be a very long driveway with having the third setback on where the paper street is. And, the stream is right there, and it doesn't look like a road is ever going to be constructed there, because it doesn't go anywhere except for into Frank Thomas's land is where it leads right into, and there's no houses on the other sides of the street, and it's just a
And because of the unique shape of the property, with a very narrow front, and it also, faces 3 streets, it's hard to, position a house on that property without a variance.
And the variance you're looking for is only along the side of the Fagan, which is the paper street, correct?
Yep. Yes.
If you were driving on Becker towards Graylock, is it on your left or your right?
It's on the, if you're driving on Becker towards Graylock, it's on your left. It's actually touching Becker and Graylock.
Right, and the Fagan, even though it stops well short of that coming off of State Street, it doesn't, on paper, it goes up to Becker and then goes to the other side of Graylock?
No, it runs through Becker and goes up towards what's that, North Amherst over there?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It goes away from Graylock, not towards it.
But I'm saying it's on the other side. It's on the North Amherst side of Graylock. So you're in a little point there.
Yes. Yeah. It's like a 5-pointed lot.
Right.
It's really odd shaped.
And you looked at other alternatives, and if the only way you could do it without having this would be a very long driveway?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just that we'd had the very long driveway, and it'd just be a lot of additional site costs, because as it sits right now, it's we're trying to put a basement in there, and we plan on bringing in about 4 looks like 5 feet of fill from the engineers. So it'd be a lot more additional site costs with bringing the fill in and leveling the lot.
How much longer would the driveway be?
Jeez, I'd say probably another 40 feet by the time you do the math on that house that we have proposed.
And do you have any idea what the additional cost would be for bringing the utilities in that extra distance?
I don't, but I'm predicting it'd be in the thousands.
Other questions from the board? Any board members have questions? Is there anyone from the public who wishes to be heard?
Yes, hi, this is Frank Thomas. I live right behind that property that he wants to develop.
Yes.
I have a question for him. He's up, he rang Phil in, he's 5 foot above. Where does he think that water is gonna go? On my property?
I'm not sure how, well, the engineer has it all set up. I actually dropped off a set of them to your brother Andy there. And we got.
My brother, I talked to him today. He didn't mention anything to me about it and he knew we were having this today.
Well, I dropped it off a long time ago when you guys moved the stakes that the guy put in the survey, and he's actually coming back tomorrow to re-put them back in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Where are you coming with the sewer and the water?
It's right there on that plot plan that I gave Andy.
You don't know where? You have no idea? It's
Yeah,
on
I
the
do.
plot plan?
The sewer is gonna. It says we're connecting in right by the stream, and the water's right over there by the stream. The water that's actually.
So you gotta come under you gotta come under that then. The water's on the other side of the road.
Yeah, the water we're connecting under Becker. Yep.
So you're gonna come under that and the stream.
No, we're not going under the stream. It's gonna come
through the middle of it.
Mr.
No.
Thomas, if you're interested, because it's such a hard thing for a virtual meeting, I can share the screen and you can look at the plot plan. Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Okay.
Then unfortunately, that's not helpful for him to be able to participate meaningfully right now. Oh, that was just put on the screen. Okay.
Technology, Fred.
Wow. I was afraid I was losing everybody again when that happened.
So yeah, the water line is labeled W here. This is the water line, and this is the sewer line. And these are the boundaries of the stream over here on this engineered plan.
I think he's got that water line. He forgot to change that. It kind of goes. It's going to go with the sewer line because we're not going to go through the stream, and then he's going to cut it. We're going to cut over.
So this may bend, or this may come out and bend a little
Yeah.
bit more, so that it doesn't get so close to the bank of the stream.
Yep.
And where does Mr. Thomas live in relation to this?
In the back.
I live on Amherst, directly behind him.
Okay.
His property.
Oh, I can just, he's back over here. Sorry, guys. Hello. This is Mr. Thomas's property over here.
Okay. Where there's a swimming pool back there?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing unless there's more questions on the plot plan.
No, that's
I don't
it.
have more questions on that.
As long as he's got the water worked out, like I'm saying, just so if he builds up higher, that the water drains at least into the creek.
Ms. Robertson, the town engineer would be working on drainage with that for any plot plans?
That's correct. And
Yeah, we got Joe from A and B or ABD Engineers has got. We've been working with him. Supposedly he's got it all figured out for us to get a basement in there with drainage and everything else.
Okay.
So, sir, do you have an objection to this plan?
No, as long as everything, I mean, you know, as long as, I mean, I get water from the last development that went up behind us, up there.
Yeah, there's a lot of sitting water there now.
And I just didn't want any more.
Right.
Uh,
You
we're-
know, I forget what, do we know the name of that? It's off of Consol Road, the development.
Yes. Field.
We've been to the town on that a few times too, where the water comes, their overflow pond there, the retention area overflows and floods our property.
And that's it.
That's a separate issue.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any,
All right.
any other questions from the public?
Yes, sir. I live at 206 Greylock. I'm actually going to be facing this proposed house. I'd just like to say that I'm actually for it. I would prefer to see more front yard than a driveway there, just from a visual standpoint.
Okay, thank you. So you would prefer that this be granted than the house be further back?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else from the public? Any questions from the board? And the applicant, do you have anything you wish to add after having heard the members of the public?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. I would ask if any board members wish to make a motion. If no one else wishes to make a motion, I'm going to make a motion that we approve this application. The applicant has shown hardship that the property would have to be set significantly back, adding to the construction costs. The neighbor most affected by the view of the house says that he would rather have the house closer to the street so that he is not looking at a very long driveway. The neighbor to the back was satisfied that the town would be addressing the water issues. It does not seem that there would be any adverse environmental effect to this project going forward as proposed. It would appear to add to the neighborhood to have that area developed. The paper street is actually a stream bed and unlikely to ever be developed as a street for that area, and that's the side where there's a variance requested, meaning that the neighbor directly that would be most affected would not even be there because there's a street between. So for those reasons, I would make a motion to approve the application. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, Rick Green speaking. I'll second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I would ask for a vote.
Mr. Frary,
Yes, for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Latype,
I'm gonna vote yes, and I'm happy to hear from the neighbors that they are in approval of having a nice property across the street from them.
Ms. McGinnis. I'll come back. Mr. Baig,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Please have the record reflect I performed a site visit and I seconded the motion, so I'm going to vote in favor of the motion.
Mr.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. McGinnis,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
For the reasons that were stated, I will vote yes. The variance has been granted. I want to thank you for your time as well as the members of the public who came and spent the time to have us hear their comments as well. So have a good evening and thank you.
Thank
you.
If we could call the next case, please.
The appeal of Thomas Dingley for a variance from section 220-16E2 of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskuna as it applies to the property at 1448 Balltown Road, Niskuna, New York, located in the CN Neighborhood Commercial Zone. It's within the town's overlay district to construct a 470 square foot greenhouse addition within the designated front yard setback. Section 220-16E2 states that if 50% or more of the lots on the same side of the street within 500 feet of each side of this lot have buildings on prior to the effective date of this chapter, 1971, then the front setback will be the average setback of these lots. As applied, the average setback, front yard setback along this area of Balltown Road is at 87 feet. As proposed, the greenhouse addition extends to approximately 47 feet from the front property line. Therefore, a 40-foot front yard setback variance is required. 21 notices were sent out, 1 response. We received a county referral which said to defer to local action, and we received a planning board recommendation. And Ms. Robertson will read those.
So the comment letter is from Amanda Cutter. She says, "To whom it may concern, I wish to express my opinion on the variance requested by Thomas Dingley. I reside across the street from the property at 1445 Balltown Road. My husband, Louis Cutter, and myself are in support of granting the variance to bring a business to a currently vacant property. If you need to contact me, I can be reached." Then she has a phone number and email, which I don't think need to be shared for the record. And then she said, "Thank you." The planning board referral was done on March 9th, 2020. They made the following recommendations on the average setback variance. Effect on the comprehensive plan. The planning board noted the greenhouse addition located only 47 feet from the property line is against code, but is consistent with the comprehensive plan's initiative to improve walkability. Granting the variance would support the viability of an excellent anchor business within the walkable town center overlay district. It supports economic development and pedestrian activity along Balltown Road, and it also improves the aesthetics and usability of the building. The board voted 7-0 that there was no negative effect. For suitability of use, the board voted 7-0 that the use was suitable for the area. It is a pedestrian-friendly development and helps reuse an existing building. The board felt 6-1 that it was important to note that that the developer was not moving the entire building facade forward, just making an entrance, which was less of an impact to the front yard setback. Recommendation: the board voted 7-0 in favor of making a recommendation to the ZBA to grant the 40-foot front yard setback variance.
I would ask if the applicant could come forward. Please state your name for the record, your address, what efforts you made to mitigate the need for a variance.
Yes, good evening. My name is Nick Costa, and I'm here on behalf of Thomas Dingley, who is a representative of Ace Hardware, who has purchased the parcel at 1448 Balltown Road and would like to redevelop that building into a hardware store, an Ace Hardware store. The applicant wishes to put in a greenhouse as shown on the plan, and the applicant did look at the lot and try to work with within the existing lot configuration to put in the greenhouse, and they selected the preferred location at the front, which is as is shown on the site plan. And the reason for it is because it is in the front of the building. At the rear of the building, there's a lot of other activities that go on back there operationally. There's loading docks and there's parking, and there really isn't, there's ramps and steps that lead up to the building that don't work well to allow the greenhouse at the rear. So they selected the front to be the proper location, and they are doing a concrete sidewalk out to the existing concrete sidewalk that's on Balltown Road to help the walkability of future customers that would like to walk from the nearby areas and neighborhoods to enter the building. And the greenhouse is something that they feel is a marketing tool to attract customers to come in from the street side, other than the parking lot. The parking lot, people can use it for parking there and getting to the, in from the rear of the site, but in the front is the only place where there was enough room to put in the proposed greenhouse. The proposed greenhouse is about 473 square feet, which is about 26 plus or minus feet by 19 plus or minus feet, and it's shown on the site plan. So this is the most convenient location for customers, and it can't go in the sides because there isn't enough space on the sides, and that's what we've tried to study the site to tell us where the greenhouse would be best located at, and we feel that the front is the correct location for it.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yes, this is Keith Frary. I'm curious a couple of things. One is there's a number of mature trees that are out in the green space between the existing building and Balltown Road. Are those going to be preserved?
Yes, the proposed work does not show any removal of any trees, existing trees. And you're absolutely correct. There's a 42-inch tree. There's two 42-inch trees right near the sidewalks. In fact, the proposed sidewalk will be installed between those two 42-inch trees.
What is the? I mean, we all have some idea what is the greenhouse going to look like? I didn't see any proposed pictures or any schematics or anything of it.
It'll be mostly glass, typical of a greenhouse that presents, plantings and seasonal products.
Is this just going to be a greenhouse, or is there going to be an open area as well for other types of plantings? In other words, is it just a greenhouse connected to the building?
Yes, it's a greenhouse connected to the building, but it will be open, and there'll be plants displayed and other products displayed within the area, within the open area,
Right.
as you make your way into the main building.
I mean, my concern is obviously the location. The existing masonry building is well off the road, but the location of the greenhouse is going to be smack on Balltown Road, which is obviously, so there's a concern for, the visual effect of your driving by. You can do things to buildings. It's a little hard to dress up a greenhouse. So I'm concerned about the efforts that are going to be made or what's going to be done to visually, so that, this right now you've got a large green area. Obviously the building's empty, but you've got a large green space, and now we're going to put a glass greenhouse right smack on Balltown Road.
The existing building is about 58.7 feet from the front property line, and the greenhouse, the proposed greenhouse, is about 47. Proposed, it's about 47 feet from the street. So there's about a 10-foot difference. And it's not for the entire frontage of the building. It's just for a limited amount here at the center of the building, which is about, like I was saying, a 26-foot wide by 19-foot deep area.
So on the right and the left of the greenhouse are going to be green spaces.
Yes, the existing sidewalk that goes around the building will be preserved, and the landscaping that's there is going to get preserved.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Keith, I don't think it was in the packets for whatever reason. I don't think the applicant submitted it, but we do have a rendering of the building with the greenhouse attached. Would you like to see it?
I'd like to see it.
It's going to be a little hard for me to see it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm sorry.
Put it up because Mr. Lateif and I would like to see it.
Well, I'd like to see it too, Mr. Chairman, but I'm constrained by the fact that I'm joining this meeting on the telephone.
Yes.
I apologize for that.
If Mr. Ferry gets to see it, I'd like to see it too.
Yeah,
Maybe I can have Mr. Green be my proxy and tell me how it looks.
No, he can't see me.
Mr. Ferry, would you like me to text you one?
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
like
we
you
could
to
do
text.
that.
I can text you one.
That would be lovely. Thank you, Mr. Latide.
And I can text it to Mr. Green.
Okay, perfect. Oops, sorry. I was thinking I could email him, but I'm sharing my screen.
Uh,
So this is the greenhouse here. Obviously, it has a peaked roof. This is about how, the scale of it sticking out of the building down here.
And it's in the center of the building where there's already an area of the building that comes out.
That's correct.
That's correct, yes.
Oops.
Hello?
And again, we're dealing with an average setback. So some of the buildings in the area, like the KinderCare and the WRGB, are set very far back from the road. And it's an average, like the First National Bank is very close.
Thank you, Mr. Latide.
You're very welcome.
And Mr. Green, you should be getting it any moment.
Thank you, Chairman Goodman.
Mr. Hook, what about you? Are you able to see?
I am not so constrained. Yes, I can see.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
Laura, just a procedural question. Is this made its full round of review, or is there going to be more review, for instance, by the planning board, et cetera?
So this is actually, the planning board had to deny the application. They did look at it. They did want to see a pedestrian connection to Balltown Road, but it's actually still relatively preliminary and still requires full site plan approval by the planning board.
The reason I ask is, and I know it's not within our purview and it's not something we deal with, but I do have traffic concerns since this isn't by a light. We're talking about ability to get in and out of the property, but I know that's more of a planning board issue than it is ours.
Yes, and that has come up. Their main entrance remains and has to be off of Knott Street, interestingly.
Over by the Bank of Scotia over there?
Yeah, like when you turn on Knott Street, it's behind the Bank of Scotia is the main driveway. And
right.
They'll be upgrading it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Anyone in the public who wishes to be heard for or against the application? Hearing none, I would ask if any board members wish to make a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that we approve the variance. While I remain, concerned, I have faith that the applicant and from the renderings that we've got, that this is going to be tastefully done, preserve the trees, preserve the green space. So it's not going to have necessarily an adverse effect on the neighborhood. I think that the fact that we have an empty building sitting here, they're looking to bring in a well-established and reputable company to come in and occupy this space. This is obviously at least partially a commercial area with other businesses located up and down, and the fact that the building is going to be what appears to be rehabbed and well done. The greenhouse appears to fit in well with the existing building, and like I said before, that we're going to maintain green space along Balltown Road with keeping the trees that exist there. I think that given the constraints of the space, it's going to be hard for them to do anything different. You have to have the parking lot. They're required to have a certain number of spaces, and rather than put that on the front of the building, they've already got it existing on the back. So I think it's going to fit in well with the neighborhood. I don't see any other way to configure this to be able to put the greenhouse in. And so I don't think is it substantial? I don't think it's so substantial in proportion to what is there existing, and especially given the design. So for those reasons, I'm going to move that we grant the variance.
A motion has been made. Is there a second?
This is Maureen. I second the motion for the reasons stated.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I would ask if the clerk could call the roll, please.
Mr. Ferry,
Yes, for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Latif,
Yes, for all the reasons stated, and like to add that it's good to have take an old building and make it into something new. This way it's not vacant anymore.
Ms. McGinnis,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Begg,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Please have the record reflect that I performed a site visit on the motion. Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Hope,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes, for the reasons stated. Your variance is granted. I want to thank you for taking the time to come out this evening.
Thank you.
If we could call the next case, please.
The appeal of AJ Sign Company agent for a variance from section 220-22A, 10A1 and 3 of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskuna as it applies to the property at 1945 Union Street, Niskuna, New York, located in the R1 low density residential zoning district, to replace an existing sign on the Union Street and install a new sign on Rosendale Road. Variances for the number of signs and ground clearances are required. Section 220-22A 10 states, at any time there is a new sign or a modification or replacement of an existing sign associated with a non-residential use identified in section 220-10 as a permitted or special principal use with a legally non-conforming non-residential use or with multifamily dwelling, the following standards shall apply. A, the residential and conservation districts. 1, a legally non-residential use is permitted, 1 sign. As proposed, there are 2 signs, therefore a variance for 1 additional sign is required. 3, freestanding signs shall be ground monument signs only. Ground signs are defined as freestanding signs whose entire bottom is in contact with or in close proximity within 2 feet to the ground. As proposed, signs are 3.5 feet and 3.8 feet above the ground. Therefore, 1.5 foot and 1.8 foot variance are required. 19 notices were sent out, 0 responses. We received the county referral, deferred to local consideration, and we received the planning board recommendation.
Sorry, let me scroll up here for a second. April 27th, this Monday, the planning board reviewed the proposal and made the following recommendations. Effect on the comprehensive plan. The planning board reviewed the comprehensive plan and found no specific reference to signage in this zoning district. They don't see the presence of the signs or their dimensions to be detrimental, given the existing sign on Union Street and the proposed new sign on Rosendale Road is small. Therefore, the board voted 7-0 that the proposal has no effect on the comprehensive plan. For suitability of use, the board noted that the new sign that will replace the existing sign near Union Street entrance is approximately 1 square foot smaller in size and is closer to the ground than the existing sign. The board also stated the addition of the sign at Rosendale Road entrance will be useful for wayfinding and safety. The Agudadequin driveway is close by, and it can be difficult to navigate the entrances to these long driveways. They also noted that neither of the new signs will be illuminated, limiting the impact to neighbors. The area along Route 7 is busy, and there are a variety of signs in the area and power lines, so it is not going to be out of character for Route 7. The board voted 7-0 that the proposal is suitable. As the recommendation, the board voted 7-0 to recommend approval of the area variances. And they wanted you guys to know, should the ZBA grant the variance, the planning board wouldn't see the project again. It would proceed directly to building permit. They felt it was a small enough site plan change that they're referring it to you for final approval, if you so choose.
Thank you. I would ask if the applicant could come forward. Please state your name and address, your application, the reasons for it, and what efforts you made to mitigate the need for a variance.
Yeah, I'm Tom Wheeler with AJ Signs in Burnt Hills, New York. Basically, we're just replacing the one sign on Union Street again with something that's smaller and lower to the ground. We did add a retaining wall feature, and we do want the sign to be high enough off the ground that in snow, also there's some grass over there. We want to be above the height of that so that the sign is visible from Union Street. The second sign on Rosendale Road is tiny. It's 18 by 20 inches, and it's more of a directional aid than anything. With the long driveways, you really have no idea which driveway is which, so we want to mark that driveway in an effective manner. We came up with a sign a little bit bigger than the average mailbox. Have it at a height that will be in driver's vision clearly, so it's really a directional aid.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Just wondering about the double-sided, right? The signs that you making?
Yes, they're perpendicular to the road, double-sided.
Double-sided. And so where does it sit exactly in the driveway, or in the side, or where does it sit? The sign?
It's next to the driveway, so that when you're coming up Rosendale, you'll see the sign and know that's the correct driveway.
So if you're coming up, if you come in from Union and you go down Rosendale, it's going to be on the right side, correct?
Yes, on the right.
On the right side. Would it be to the beginning of the driveway, or where would it be placed in that area? Because I know there's a curve there, and I'm just concerned where it's
Mr.
gonna
Latif,
be.
I believe if you look at the last page of your packet, if you've got that, there's
I do. I have it.
There's
I'm
a
looking.
Google overhead that shows where it's going to be located.
Let me see. Okay. I'm looking at it right now. Okay,
I believe it's a
is that
distance from the
replacing,
curb.
replacing the black sign they have right now?
Yes, we're replacing the existing sign on Union Street in the same location.
Okay, in the same location, and there's a couple pillars in there behind the pillar there.
Yeah, going right where the existing sign is. We're gonna take that one out and put this one in.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ferry.
You're so welcome, Mr. Latif. I think Laura said this, but neither one of these is lighted, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, I would ask if there's anyone in the public who wishes to be heard for or against the application. Hearing none, I would ask if any board members wish to make a motion.
Richard Green, I'd be a pleasure to make a motion. I would move to grant the application. The fact is, with regard to the signs, one might quibble about where it could be, but for the most part, it's hard for me to see where the benefit of either sign could be achieved by other feasible means to the applicant. I mean, where else are you going to place the signs when the purpose of the sign is for a directional aid to traffic, in particular traffic on Union Street? I don't see an undesirable change in the neighborhood. In fact, one sign is basically being replaced. And yes, there is a new sign on Rosendale Road, but again, the location of the sign is such that I don't think that it would be undesirable to any person in the neighborhood, or an undesirable change in that neighborhood. When it comes to a sign, is it substantial? Well, the one that's replacing the sign, perhaps not. And with regard to the new sign, perhaps, but it's not so substantial. given the location of the sign, the size of the sign, the fact that the signs aren't going to be lit signs. We also have a consideration of whether there's going to be an adverse environmental effect. I don't see or hear or envision any. And with regard to an alleged difficulty as self-created, perhaps, but again, it's not determinative, so let's not spend a lot of time on a factor that's not determinative and an otherwise, in my humble estimation, appropriate application. Frankly, I think that the signs will actually help the motoring public and will not hurt the pedestrian public nor hurt the residential nature of the neighborhood. So based upon that, I would move that the application be granted.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to second the motion for all the reasons stated by Mr. Green. I don't live that far from where that property is, and I see a little better sign that they making, and I second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I would ask if the clerk could please call the roll.
Mr. Frary,
Yes, for all the reasons stated, and I would also say, in my opinion, I think both signs are, at least the one on Union Street is an upgrade, and I think both of them look very nice.
Mr. Lateif,
yes.
Ms. McGinnis,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Bay,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes. The motion carries. The variance is granted. I want to thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
I would ask if there's any other business to come before the zoning board tonight. Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
I second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I want to especially thank staff for being able to set this up so that we're able to conduct the meeting in this fashion when we're not allowed to meet in person. And with that, I think that we will get together again next month, either in person or by electronic means. So thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
At this point, there's no cases on the agenda for next month.
And there's likely to be not many because there's no one being denied anything right now because everything is stopped.
Yeah.
All right. So the streaming has stopped, so we're not on